Hi there guys, welcome back to another one of our product reviews at Find It Archery Supplies. Today we're actually going to do a limb review. Now it's going to be a bit of a tricky review because we're going to try and do a multiple comparison across the brands at roughly the same sort of poundages. Due to the fact that in stock we don't have all the sizes in all the brands, we're going to sort of mix and match it a little bit, but what we do compare, we will compare against its equivalent in the same poundage. So if we switch poundage from say 70-38, we'll switch over to 70-36 and then do a comparison on that or whatever is the equivalent in that poundage. Now when we do the review today, we're going to do it on a chronometer. We're actually going to test a few little things in regards to speed, quality of the limb, all that kind of thing. Now if you do have any questions on this, please feel free to email me. I know a lot of you probably will disagree or not agree with some of the findings. However, again, like we've said in the past, this is our personal this is just our personal opinions that we express in these interviews or in these reviews, I should say. So please don't take offense to anything that we say. But today I guess the chronometer will speak for itself and we'll be able to go from there. So we'll be back very shortly with some of our reviews. Okay guys, welcome back. So today what we're going to use is we're going to use the, as far as the riser goes, we'll be using a Win & Win Inno CXT with a fibre-based stabiliser setup and a Shibuya sight. The arrows we'll be using today are an X10 with a 500 spine with XS vanes. So everything will be consistent, the same arrows will be used regardless of poundage, so there's no bias there. And that way our findings can be the same across the bows. Now also keep in mind, when we do this review, certain bows do have a reaction with limbs. So you'll find some of the different brands will actually make the limb perform maybe 1 to 2 feet per second faster. So unless we went through and did every single riser with every single limb, we wouldn't really get 100% conclusion to this. So please be mindful of that when you actually watch this review, that this is based on one riser using multiple limbs. The string we'll be using today is an 18 strand 8125 string. So that's a handmade string, not a fast light string or a pre-made string. So it's been pre-stretched, it's ready to shoot. The brace height on the bow is about 9 1/4 inches. And the bow will be a 70-inch setup all the way. If we have to switch to a 68 setup, we'll actually come back to that and we'll switch over and we'll do that then. Now this bow review will actually be, this limb review will actually be posted as is in its entirety. It won't be per limb, it'll be a one-off limb review. So it will be kind of long, so please be patient and hopefully you'll stay to the end and it'll be informative enough for you to be able to make a decision of what limb choice is correct for you. So we'll be back in very shortly with our bow and our chronometer and we'll kick off there. Today we're going to start this limb review using the benchmark as Win & Win primes. We'll switch over to some powers later on because we'll do a head-to-head test at 68 inch because that's all I have at the moment. So we'll start off with the Win & Win primes and we'll do 3 arrows per limb and then we'll switch over. So first arrow. So the first arrow came out at 200 feet per second. That one came out at 201 feet per second. So again, 201 feet per second. So the average there is 201 feet per second. So that was Win Prime limbs. So the Win Prime limbs are predominantly a wood limb with a little bit of carbon element to them. Very, very nice limb. I'll just take this bowl apart so we can actually have a look at them. And then we'll switch over, and the next limb that we'll do will be the Xamic Extremes, and then from there we'll just keep progressing through. So just bear with me 2 seconds while I take this bowl apart. Okay, so we have Win Inno, as you can all see there, Inno X Prime, or is it upside down for people looking through mirrors, so on and so forth. So there we go, that way. Very well made limb, very, very smooth to shoot, quite comfortable to shoot actually. You don't get a lot of resistance in them. However, not really a limb that you probably want to sit on for too long in the draw. I was probably being a bit hesitant because I have a $200 chronometer in front of me that I really don't want to shoot and break. So overall, I have personally shot these limbs for a long time. Very good. We'll shoot up to 90 meters quite comfortably. You will be down a bit on your side, but overall, out of a 25-inch riser, at a approximate 29-inch draw, I actually have about a 29.25-inch draw. We were coming out at 201 feet per second for 2 out of 3 shots. The very first shot that we shot off on the day came out at 198 feet. We jumped up to 200, then 2 shots at 201. You didn't see the first shot because that was a test. So out of Win Innos X Primes, you will get an arrow at 29-inch draw at 70 by 38 pound at 201 feet per second. So hang tight, we'll come straight back with the Xamic Extremes. Guys, welcome back. So we're going to jump straight into it. We're going to go on to the Xamic Extreme 2s. The Xamic Extreme 2 is a foam core, so with timber in it as well, and carbon. So it's a mixture of 3 different products. It's a very well made limb, and probably the close to the Masters range in the Xamic range, but it's up there as their highest 2 limbs that they manufacture. So just to recap, the bow we're using today is a Win Inno CXT 25-inch riser with 70-inch limb. So all up we have a 70-inch bow. We have a fibre bow stabilizer using the S3 stabilizers system, so they have like a corkscrew effect. If you have a look straight down there, you'll see that lovely corkscrew effect that they have. Very, very good in the wind. Can't recommend them enough. So we're going to jump straight on. Again, same arrows, X10s 500 spines at 29-inch draw out of 38-pound Xamic Extremes. So that first one came out at 199 feet per second. $200 feet per second. $201 feet per second. So there you got it. Xamic Extremes. As you can see, there's the Xamic Extremes. Put that around there for you. The 2.0s are exactly the same as a Win Inno X Prime. So the next thing we're going to go to, we're going to sort of shift through the range a little bit here. So the next one we're actually going to go to will be the Xamic Masters Max limb. So we'll see how that performs. So hold tight, we'll be back in 2 seconds with those limbs set up ready to go. Okay guys, so welcome back. We're going to jump straight into these Masters Max limbs. The Masters Max are a little bit different to the Extremes. They have a carbon inner with a timber outer. So probably the closest match to the Win & Win Inno X Primes as far as composite makeup. So this will be very interesting. So far we've had timber versus foam carbon, and they were almost 1 for 1. So let's see how these limbs compare in their behaviour and speed. And please feel free to comment on my form. I know it's not perfect, but I really don't care. Well, I do, but I'm just saying that because I know that people are going to complain. So that came out at 195 feet per second. But I will say, probably the smoothest limb to pull out of the three so far. $193. $196. So we're sitting around 195 as an average there, maybe 194 and a half. But in saying that, the only way you can compare these three limbs is the feel. I think one of the biggest issues with the limbs we just shot there, being the Masters Max, is they're so soft to pull, you actually pull faster. So even though they may be up to nearly 5 feet per second, or of a foot per second difference compared to the Inno X Primes and the Samics, it's very interesting that the shot process actually went off a lot faster. So that means they're softer to pull, which means you're pulling through a little bit faster, so the release and everything is there. So probably out of the three, probably the most stable as far as the shot goes. But anyway, the next limb we're going to jump straight onto is the Uka UX100 limb. So this is the top of the Uka range. Uka are French, very well made limbs. They're actually a machined limb, so they guarantee you they will never delaminate. So bear with us, we'll get straight onto those and we'll see how they compare. Alright guys, we're back. Okay, so we're going to jump straight into the UX100 limbs and we're going to give these a comparison. So basically what we're going to do, all right, so this way we can actually have a bit of a taste at some power limbs as well, is we're going to shoot a 68-inch version at 38 pound. So keep in mind that'll actually be 40 pounds. So theoretically, if they're around the same poundage, we should come out at around 200 and out of a 25-inch rise with a 68-inch setup, which is 40 pounds, theoretically we should be about 4 feet to 5 feet per second faster when we shoot those limbs. So that will tell us if they're all on par. But what we'll do as a comparison is we'll actually shoot an equivalent limb that we know comes out at around 200 feet per second, but we'll shoot a 68-inch version of that, so we'll be able to do a comparison against those, and we really will be able to see which is the fastest limb in that market. So hold on 2 seconds, let's get in straight into these UX100s, and we'll see how these ones come out. Well, they only came out about 192 feet per second. Just bear with us 2 seconds, guys. chronographer issue. So, on a whole, the UX 100s were actually slower again. We came out at about 195 feet per second. So here you have it. So far, the two fastest limbs in the range is the Win NOx Prime and the Samick Extreme 2s, neck and neck, almost the same limb. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch over to some 68 inches. We're going to shoot a 68-inch Extreme versus a Win Power, and that's really going to tell us where we're at and what the power difference is. So bear with us 2 seconds and we're just going to jump straight into those 68-inch limbs. Okay, hi guys, welcome back. Okay, so we're going to jump straight into the Win X Powers. So this time, just due to stock, not having 70-inch versions of these in stock, we're going to shoot a 68-inch version at 38 pounds. So that is on a 27-inch riser. So it is a 68-inch limb, not a 66-inch limb. So we're going to shoot that. We're going to do the comparison limb against it will be the Samick Extremes. So we'll try and do that changeover as quickly as we can. And that will really sort of give us our benchmark of what are the fastest limbs out there. Now just keep in mind, these are a shorter limb and I've got a long draw. So theoretically, these are actually probably going to pack a little bit more punch in comparison to the 70-inch versions. So we need to be mindful of that when we do this particular setup. So we are actually probably going to come out about maybe 5 to 6 feet per second faster. But it'll still be interesting because we're still going to be doing comparison limb against it. So, all right, let's get straight into it. Just for the people out there, you'll probably notice we have a different string on the bow. We had to have a different string because 70-inch strings won't work on a 68-inch bow. Well, they will, but brace height will be incorrect. So here we go, straight into it. Straight away, different feel in the limb. You know, different behaving limb. Now, what's really interesting here is we've gone to a 68-inch limb at 38 pounds. So theoretically, we should be getting quite a lot of punch out of these limbs. We're actually getting less. These limbs are coming out about 189 feet per second. So in saying that, what's interesting about this is we're actually going slower. So there's definitely a difference. However, the limbs are tighter to pull. So it's a very different situation we have going on here. Alright guys, so basically the fastest reading we got out of those 3 arrows was 188 feet per second. So I'm not actually going to jump into the extremes on this case. What's interesting here is that you have a prime example of something not really catching you off guard here. So really, out of the high-end limbs that we tested, and I know some of you are going to say we should have really had a set of 70-inch Win Powers to try against it. Realistically, the two fastest limbs in the range was actually the primes and the extremes. So when you're looking at a fast limb or a better performing limb in that higher end, the figures speak for themselves. So keep in mind all those high-end limbs that we actually did do, we're all using the same string, the same arrows, everything. So, you know, the only difference really between the two, which could be taken into consideration here is the brace height difference. We could have maybe squeezed maybe another 2 to 3 feet, maybe another 5 feet out of the 68 versions there by just upping that brace height just a little bit more, because we're only shooting about an 8.5 inch brace height out of those. We should have been up around about 8 9 inch. So, you know, in taking that into consideration, we probably are still up around that 200 feet per second mark. So it's a very interesting thing when you hear people talking about limbs of being faster, more powerful, more balanced. If we're to look at all the limbs in a whole, the softest ones and the nicest ones to actually shoot were the Masters Max. They were the softest, the more forgiving. The drawback to that is a much faster shot process. You came through the clicker much faster. But probably the most forgiving and soft limb out of the range. Between the UX 100s, the Win and the Extremes, look, I think it's a personal thing. To me personally, the primes feel a little bit smoother than the Extremes. However, the Extremes actually give you the feeling of a little bit more power behind your finger. Not as aggressive as their old cousin, the BF, that Samick made. It was an extremely aggressive go-go limb. It would be actually interesting to do a test with a set of those, because they're a much more aggressive under the finger limb compared to the Extreme 2s. So in saying that, realistically, if you're looking for two really good limbs, choices are Win and Win powers, because I'm actually going to jump into the assumption that they're going to be about the same as the Prime and the Extremes. So you've really got powers, Win and Win X Prime and the Samick Extremes. Now, one last thing to consider when you're looking at those sorts of three sets of limbs. The Extremes are nearly $100 cheaper. So you're getting the same performance out of a limb for $100 less. So bear that in mind when you're thinking about that limb choice that you want to get to for that high-powered limb. You know, figures speak for themselves. If you want, please email me. I'm happy to actually take some photos of the chronograph through those sets of arrows, through the different limbs that we shot today. I'm happy to do that if you don't believe me. But at the end of the day, that's where we've come out at. The chronographs have spoken for it. So guys, any questions? And if you come up with something yourself that contradicts something that we've had here, please let me know, because we take into consideration that different environments. Today is actually a bit humid. We're shooting indoors, not outdoors. So all these things come into play. I'm actually standing pretty close to the chronographer as well. Maybe I should be another foot or so back, but look, at the end, that's where we've come out. All right, so we've done the limb test on the bulk of the limbs that we shot today. What you didn't see on camera is we actually shot a set of Samick Avantis at 70-38. And they came out at 198 feet per second, so 2 feet per second slower than the Extremes, however slightly faster than the Max. So that was a very interesting scenario. Now, what we also did, what you didn't see, is we did a test based at 70 inches 34 pound, and we did that with Kaya K1s, Kaya K3s, Samick Athlete and Samick Avanti limbs. Some pretty interesting results came out of that. The Kaya K1s and K3s came in, the Kaya K1s came in about 186 feet per second. The Kaya K3s came at 187 feet per second. The Samick Athletes came in at 183 feet per second, and the Samick Avantis came in at 183 feet per second. Now, something just to note there was we used the same arrows we did when we shot the 38 pounds. So the arrows were a bit heavier. The Athletes, we actually had to modify the brace sight a little bit. They seem to stretch a lot more. So there was a brace sight difference that we had to modify on the Athletes to get the brace sight correct. All were shot at approximately 9.25 inches of brace sight. So the arrows were about probably 2 arrow spines over where we should have been at 34 pounds. So take that into consideration. Probably all those limbs probably were up around the sort of 195 feet per second. Something to note though, out of those 4 limbs that we shot, now we didn't shoot any of the Sebastian Flute limbs. I can do that for you if you wish to send me a request. I'll do a speed test for you and compare them against one of our benchmark limbs. However, what to notice was the grouping that was happening with these limbs. Probably the most erratic group was out of the K3s. There was quite a large group that formed. Give or take, we're only shooting about 10 metres, so it's very interesting to look at how limbs perform. One thing to notice with the K3s, there was a little bit of non-forgiveness in the shot, so if I had a poor release, they tended to go everywhere. Now, when we shot the K1s, K3s, athletes and the Avantis, we shot 6 arrow ends instead of 3 arrow ends to get a good average. The most stable limb out of the lot was the Avantis. It was the only one that whenever we shot, or whenever I personally shot them, the speed was constant. So we didn't get a fluctuation of say 181 to 184 down to 182 or 183. For every arrow we shot out of the K and the K3s, we were getting arrow fluctuation speed. So one would fluctuate up, then it would fluctuate down, then it would back up again and then back down again. So the only one that actually was consistent, where the chronometer was constantly saying the same speed over and over again, was actually the Semi-Avanti limb out of those 4. And coincidentally, the grouping was the best out of the Avanti. So, you know, what this sort of says is feet per second everything, or is it balance of limb that's more important here? So I think what we have happening here is a prime example of balance versus power. In saying that, drawing all those limbs, they all feel completely different. The athlete probably felt the spongiest out of the lot. The Avanti actually felt the snappiest out of the lot, so I was very surprised over that feet per second. But like I said, what was quite funny was when we shot a 38-inch limb, or a 38-pound limb in the same length, it was only 2 feet per second slower than an extreme, which makes it faster than a set of Ukas. So keeping all that in mind, overall the Avantis technically should actually be a faster limb. Something I want to leave you with before we finish this limb review, and I do know we didn't cover a lot of other limbs, so if there is a limb out there that you would like us to test, please send me a link or an email and we will comfortably do that for you, or happily do it for you. But like I said back in the very beginning of this, please keep in mind that when you look at a limb and how it behaves, every single riser in the market actually changes the dynamic of a limb. One of the biggest problems you have in archery is your coach will say to you, you should have a Sebastian Flute Premium with Sebastian Flute limbs, blah blah blah. Look, we completely disagree with that in here, and I personally disagree with that. Archery is a personal choice. Don't just take one person's advice or one person's recommendation on something. Ask around, get different opinions. Most importantly, get into your shops. Okay, I can understand buying online is sometimes the cheapest method and some people don't have access to a shop. But look, honestly people, please go to a shop, ask them to try limbs, ask them to draw them back, put a string on it and pull them back. Because I can guarantee you that the limb behavior per the riser changes on every single bow. Now if I had shot that test today on a fibre bow, I guarantee you the speeds would have been completely different. They would have been either maybe 2-3 feet per second faster or slower, because the fibre bow has no stack. So if we shot them in a GMX, they probably would have been different, because the GMX is a lot stiffer. So every riser changes the dynamic of the limb. So just because somebody says you should have this limb combination and this riser, it's not necessarily correct for you. You may never find it comfortable and you may never shoot to your potential because of that exact same reason. So please keep that in mind when you're considering buying limbs and a bow. That, you know, what this simple test proved, and we tested probably, you know, overall today about 6-7 different limbs. So it just goes to show that every limb is actually different. The dynamic of a limb is different. You know, so look, as I said, I'll leave you with that thought of how you should actually choose the limb and the bow combination. You know, as somebody reminded me the other day, you know, especially when you look at Hoyt bows, Hoyt generally make their limbs to suit their bows. Okay, so you're probably going to get the best combination out of having Hoyt limbs on Hoyt bows, especially in the formula range. But, you know, in saying that, in something like a GMX or a Horizon, you might actually get better performance out of some of these other limbs out there. So looking at value for money on limbs and all that kind of gear, look, budget is budget, and that is no two holes barred. Feet per second is not absolutely everything. The behaviour of the limb is actually probably more important. And out of today, overall, one of the best balanced limbs that we had in our range was the Avanti limb. Now, you know, like I've said in the past, it's very hard for us shop owners to stay non-biased against product that we either have direct access to or products we have to get in from elsewhere. But, you know, I can honestly, personally tell you, out of shooting all those different limbs, and they're limbs that we all stock, the Avanti is actually probably the most balanced, smoothest, consistent limb to pull shot after shot after shot. So for the money that they're worth, they're very well worth thinking about. But look, if you have any questions on limbs or how you should pick your riser and your limb combination, please email us at sales@findarcherysupplies.com.au, and we'll be more than happy to get back to you with any of those answers. For now, happy shooting and enjoy the rest of your day.